Welcome again. I'm into definition 21 out of 1001, and this one's really going to start applying things nice and clearly and give some ideas for other people that might want to take the geometries or the scripts and turn them into other things. So the best thing about these scripts is you look at them, and you come up with new ideas. Basically, we're into inputs now, and in doing inputs, I thought, okay, we definitely went through numbers, letters, and panels. You can't help, but I wanted to apply the Boolean toggle, the button, the control knobs, the digital scroller, the MD slider, and the value list, just to show you application of that. But let's take a look at the nodes as they stand on their own. Definitely, here's some data, and if you want to figure out what something does, just grab a panel, pop it in, Boolean toggle, and it's false, and you click it, and it turns to true. Button, it's false until you hold it down, and it turns to true. Good little applied thing if you want to start using it. Now here's a number slider that just comes off the shelf at 0.250, and that's what it's set at. The control knob is a crazy thing. I don't see any point of looping around this until you hit your max. I'm sure the max is 10, but I guess if you like to swirl your fingers like that, then I guess use the control knob. I've applied it in the script, but like I said, well, I haven't said it. I've never used it. The digital scroller, once again, I use it only when I'm within the number sliders edit. So when I go into the number slider edit, I like to scroll in here on the number slider, but I never bring it in. But I did apply it to the script to show you that. The value list, this little thing's kind of nice because you can just click down 3 and the number will go to 3, or you can right click and go to checklist, which then you can just tap on which one you want. As you go through it, you can check off, like stupid things in the way. You can check off which ones you want. Maybe you want more than one. The checklist looks like it might somewhat be helpful. Let me get that little guy out of the way. You can also right-click and go to the drop-down, which it was. You can go in and choose sequence, which it goes around and stops at the highest number, then goes down to the other one and stops. And then when you click too much, it opens up like thinking you want another command. So that's kind of, interface there isn't so great. And the last one's the value cycle, which just keep going 1, 2, 3. 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm clicking too fast for it, so it keeps saying I want another command. So I don't use that value list, but I've applied it. I want to show you with the value list that what's in it is this data. Somebody sat and typed this in, so you double click on the value list or right click and hit edit. You're getting what somebody programmed in, and they defaulted to this. That's a lot of work to custom everything, but it might be necessary. But think about that. That coming in, if you pull it into a panel, really doesn't give you those outcomes. It gives you all the data that you wrote in there. So you got 1 equals 1, but that's the data, 1 equals 1. So if you took a list item and you said, okay, I want to look at each list item, that's kind of useless data for at least geometry. Like, I don't know why I bring it in there, except unless I was taking it to print text on display. So this is pointless. I don't know. I'd have to find a plugin that I can take that data. I'm sure it's easier than I think, just to bake it into Rhino, but we'll get there. The MD slider, I produced the plane, and then we'll leave this for a second, and we have a nice surface, and there it is, and we'll go big here. And basically, I evaluated that surface after reparametizing it, so with that surface tool, if I hit this, no, that's not going to work, you're basically going to see me slide around that plane that's on that surface all the way from 0, 0 to 1, 1 because I've reparametized it between there on the U and V coordinates. So that said, I've also thought, well, why not just build a surface with the same UV count that's out of that, and that just doesn't really do anything, but it prepares me for going into it a little farther. You get some really cool information, the points, the normals, and the frame. With that, we're going to start applying this. So here's the first kind of script that's decent. I've done so many videos, I think about 175 in the last month and a half, which is nuts. I'm happy with my following. Here it is. We're 4 minutes in. Let's take a look at what I did. I basically built a surface, and a very large surface at that, 66 by 66. I put positive and negative into a domain, so it doesn't just come off the X, Y in a positive direction. It goes in the negative directions on the Y and the X. So you get a nice big box. I basically use, and this is a good time to go to your PARAM viewer and grab your bifocal plugin, which I use on everything, divide surface, and I decided to divide it by, I can divide it by 3, I can divide it by 2, I can divide it by 1, but you're going to see how that changes the geometry, and actually let's just look at it. As I go into there, if I'm using 2, if I'm using 1, I'm getting nothing. If I'm using 2, 3, and then 4, this sucker starts to get slowed down, and I haven't even done any Booleans on it. So I think the biggest we want to play with right now is probably to show you what's going on, the 2, and you're like, what is that crazy geometry? But then again, I've gotten with the jewelry group, which I think there is applications for this, for some very organic, beautiful work. Got to admit, Ohm pushing me to use this variable pipe, I just love it. And so you take an iso trim of that surface, and you cut it into the amount of divisions that you want. So cut it 2 by 2. I find a center of each one of those squares. So there's the original surface cut into 4, 2 by 2. The centers are there. And I decided to put one of these on here just to show you. I made I evaluated that surface, each panel at a point. And so I've got it kind of in the center, but not really in the center. And so that center line can go from the start of the point to the normal as direction coming off of the evaluator, and you're left with these lines. And in having those lines, I said, well, give me the ends of those lines. And what I want is I want to shift list and take the centroid. Actually, I didn't use it yet. I want to take the end of the list, and I want to take these points. Oh, I ended up making these points surface for points. I ended up not using it. I guess I was going to do that, but I don't think no, I didn't yet. Don't know what I was planning there. I was dividing the surface again for some reason. I shifted the list so the end of the line would then become a seated arc that starts at the centroid and goes to the end of the arc that's been shifted. So if you don't go from the end of the arc and you make that arc, it's going to just line up as a nice smooth arc. But if you shift the list, you get a really cool funicular structure if you canopied it. So I like that. Plus, it's wonky. It's like a bend deform tool on an arc that I can really control this arc. And this is where you're like, all right, I'm going to watch Michael Wickerson's tutorials because they're awesome. He knows what he's doing geometrically with lines and points, and that's all I ever wanted to know as an engineer, an architect, a programmer, and an artist, and a sculptor extraordinaire. And I say, okay, go for it. So you take that. I found a list length, and I do the same fancy pants stuff that I do every time, except I put it in controls. One of these control knobs to handle the pi from 0 pi to 2 pi. And that just seems like a big waste of time to do that as opposed to a slider, but I'll do it. And I threw it into a rotate geometry. So I actually have control over twisting those awesome little things from its original form to twisting it out so they don't connect. But since they're going to be solid masses, I know enough about sculpture to know that if you make something thick enough, it's going to run into each other. And I worked a lot in burlap. Take a look at michaelwickerson.com. As opposed to Wickerson Studios, and you'll see all this funky stuff I made for years, and I guess I continue to make. Anyway, take that geometry, I pipe them, and once again I use this awesome system of just a quick range that implies a domain, which I keep going back to say, don't take shortcuts, put that in there, put your steps in at whatever they are so you know what they are, put the domain end in here, but then again I tell you to do it, here I am not doing it. This one's pretty cool because this makes a really thick pipe, kind of funky monster, and you can cap the ends, and this one actually makes a very thin one because I've set this, I believe this curve type is sine summation. So if I pop that one into the second parameter, as long as that matches the numbers of the first one, you've got this one going thin. Now what I haven't done is taken these parameters, which won't work because the parameters have to go from 0 to 1, reparameterizing the curve, so that will not function. You're going to have to go in and take that curve and go directly into the curve for it to work. At least I believe so. Hang on, what did I do wrong? Let me just, oh, sorry, the geometry has to go into the curve without being, the parameter has to be uninterrupted, so we're going to leave that one in, and this one, actually, that should have been fine. Pop the range into there, the range into the parameters. Not sure why it didn't work. 29 milliseconds we're already at, and I can cap it, and I can say don't cap it, or I can take on my button toggle and cap it and only have it cap when I hold it. And the reason I might do that, and actually I don't know why I'd want to do that, I'm going to take Control Shift to disconnect, and over here I'm going to say caps round, and that makes for a different structure. It may look like smoother and nicer here, but what I don't like from my geometry, because I've played with it enough, is when I put it in here and I shrink it back, I'm not getting this really nice, cool, strange pattern that's happening at the ends. And it's hard to see on this one. It's something geometric that flattens and pulls itself in. Let me, oh, and I should say I've gone into here and I've hit edit on this one. And I've actually played with raising the change in sign up to a factor of 5. So those are numbers you can play with afterwards that'll change shape. Like what happens if I take that up to a 10? Let's see what that does to the geometry. Yeah, there you go. It really busts the geometry and explodes it. So that said, I might want a big funky chunky thing like that and have a look what it looks like. And you see I've got these open ends because I have not capped them. If I cap them, now I get this strange pattern here that I've been looking for. So I made it larger and I get these little seats. And you're like, well, how are those seats, Michael? And I said, well, I've been playing with script long enough to know if I take this back down and use my UV slider and put it back in the middle, you see this kind of square seats that face up. That's not very exciting to have that. But now we have something that I can slow this down to half a minute to pull this into a solid intersection of geometry. I'm not even going to get that. I'm not even going to go in here and hit enable because that's just going to slow us down. But I do want to show you at 36 milliseconds as we approach the 10-minute mark. What I can do is now go back to this value tool here and pump it up to 3. And bam, we're starting to get some really strange geometry. Like I'm thinking like an underground cave system, something to walk through, all variable pipe. And if you wanted to slow down and render it, you could. And then also you have this control over bending, warping, and turning that in the same way that you did before, and arching it out in different ways. So really a kind of monstrous little thing. I'm going to put it back to 2. That's about all this heavy script wants. Or put it up to 4, which is going to really be cumbersome and take a second. And then go back to this thinner kind of pattern sign that I have here under radii. And you'll see it goes into this nice linear pattern, this funicular kind of crazy organic Antonio Gaudí arc. So hopefully you think, this guy's got it figured out. He's not too bad. And you want to keep watching these videos. I'm excited to see what happens. Thanks for watching.